everybody, welcome back to our Detroit Lions free agency preview. I'm Kyle Meinke, this is still Nate Atkins. Today we're previewing the receivers and tight ends. Lions have potential free agents at both positions, Nate. They're pretty big positions of need. Andre Roberts and Anquan Boldin are both free agents at receiver. And Boldin was a really important part of that offense. He was a chain mover on third down. He was in the top 6, I believe, in the league in terms of third down catches that achieved a first down. And he led the team in touchdowns. And so he's a very important player. He's a free agent. He's also mulling retirement, he told me this offseason, so there's no guarantee on where he'll be playing next year or be playing at all.
Let's look at some of the top names at wide receiver in free agency for the Lions to look at. The two biggest names are Terrell Pryor of the Browns, Alshon Jeffrey of the Bears. Of those two, I see Jeffrey more likely hitting free agency, but as we discussed, I don't think the Lions have the money to throw at a #1 wide receiver as much as they might want one. So you go kind of a little bit below them, and I think Pierre Garçon of Washington is a guy to really look at. I mean, I know he's getting a little bit older, but this guy is so crisp in his routes. He hasn't missed a game in 4 years. He's a safe one to bet on. And the Lions right now, when they need guys who can kind of create separation early in routes, he'd be the guy that I think they should definitely look at.
Sticking with Washington, I think also Deshaun Jackson could be a fit. And he's a dynamic player, and he does exactly what the Lions need. He's a field stretcher. He's so fast. Even at 30 years old, he's still getting it done. He was averaging 17.9 yards per catch last season. That's impressive, especially for a receiver who's that old. He had 16 catches on balls that went at least 20 yards through the air. That was second in the league. He's still getting it done. He's still a field stretcher. And that's exactly what the kind of complement receiver the Lions need to go with a guy like Golden Tate and a guy like Marvin Jones.
Another guy, if they really want to get that deep ball going, I think is Kenny Stills of the Dolphins. He's another guy that has really delivered on that. He had more than 17 yards per catch last year. He had 9 touchdown catches. He's really an explosive player, but he drops the ball so much, and it's really got to be concerning that a guy is 25 years old, obviously talented, but 2 different organizations have given up on him now, the Saints and the Dolphins. Do the Lions really want to invest in a guy like that? But they have to get the deep ball going. They have to get these big plays downfield. If he comes cheap, or if they can get Deshaun Jackson reasonably, I think those are guys that they have to definitely consider here. Moving on to the potential bargains in this class, really deep receiver class. A guy that's going to jump out is Ted Ginn. He's 32 years old now, so he might be falling into that bargain area just naturally. I don't really like that fit as a receiver because I think he thrives so much off play action, which the Lions don't have. They've never had a 100-yard rusher under Jim Caldwell, but he is so good on kick returns still in his career. The Lions have to get that going.
Yeah, it's hard to imagine the Lions signing a better bargain than Anquan Boldin from last year. For $2 million and then some extra money in terms of incentives. The Lions got one of the year's more valuable receivers, certainly for the Lions, and just in terms of what he could do in the red zone. He caught the game-winning pass against Washington. He moved the chains. That's the kind of guy you look for with potential bargains. And I think if he's interested in playing again, that's one the Lions should certainly look to bring back because he had a lot of chemistry there with Matt Stafford. Outside the organization, Cordarrelle Patterson is an interesting figure. Had a very mercurial stay up there in Minnesota, just on the field, off the field issues and so forth, injury, but he can move. I mean, he can really run, and so if you're looking at potential bargains who can maybe stretch the field for you, maybe he's a guy you roll the dice on. Okay, let's move along to the tight ends. Lions got some needs here. I know that fans probably sometimes don't realize it because the first-round picks that were spent on tight ends recently and Ebron and all the attention that he grabs. But Ebron is the only tight end under contract right now with the Lions, so they have a need just for bodies in general, but in particular bodies that can move other bodies. I mean, the Lions don't have a blocker at that position, a physical guy. Ebron, he's not that. He'll never be that. And so they need to fill that void in the offense, and I think a guy like Martellus Bennett makes a lot of sense. I think he's unquestionably the best tight end in the market, but he can do a little of everything. This guy, he's a punishing, physical, devastating blocker. He can move some people out of the way. I think he would add some tenacity to the position. So if you could get a guy who could block and also catch the football a little bit, I think it would really complement the personnel well. Bennett's a guy that can do it. 7 touchdown catches last year, and his ability just to move people, I think would be a good fit for the Lions.
Yeah, I think it's certainly more feasible than them going out and get Jared Cook, who's the #2 tight end in the market from the Packers, just because he's basically Eric Ebron 2.0, an older version of that, the sort of inconsistent guy, doesn't always put together, but when he does, it's really impressive. I think he's going to command a pretty top-tier deal, and he just doesn't offer enough different from Eric Ebron to pay what he's going to command on the market. So let's look at some potential bargains for the Lions at the tight end area of the market.
Yeah, I have a couple of guys, depending on which direction the Lions want to go in. I mean, we mentioned Ebron before. If the Lions are looking for a short-term guy. Maybe they're going to stick with Ebron for a while. Maybe Vernon Davis makes sense. I mean, you mentioned old. Vernon Davis is old. He's 33 now. But he's coming off his best season since 2013 as a pass catcher. It seems like he's still got some life in him. It'd be a short-term deal, obviously. It'd be cheap. Maybe that's the route the Lions want to go. If they're looking for someone maybe more long-term, I think Ryan Griffin from the Texans actually makes a lot of sense. He's a very interesting player. He's an ascending player. He was buried on the depth chart for a couple of years, so didn't do much. And even as a third tight end this year, he caught more than 50 balls, and he set career highs for yards, for first downs. I mean, across the board, it was a very good season for him. And interestingly about him, he's a deep threat as a tight end. You don't really see that much from that position, but he's a guy who's gotten open consistently deep. Did against the Lions too. We saw that quite a bit last year from tight ends. But if you're looking for deep threats and guys who can take a top off of defense, I mean, he does some interesting things 20 yards and more down the field. And so that could be a guy. I think he's going to be on the lower end of the market, but could make sense for what they're trying to do.
Receivers and tight ends, two of the more loaded areas of the market this year. Lions sure to explore that, even though they've locked up a lot of money in those areas. They've got roster spots they've got to fill. So they could also look to the draft, where the receiver position isn't as good as it's been in some years, but there's a few guys to look at there, and tight ends are absolutely loaded this year. So they've got options all across the board. They'll be looking at them. We'll be looking at them as we look through the rest of the free agency previews for the Detroit Lions here at MLive.com.